not memories, not ghosts. Physical echoes. If space-time could store gravitational waves from black holes billions of light years away, why not the echoes of human history? For 15 years, Wren built a machine designed to test that theory. He called it the palimpsest engine. 2. The machine. The palimpsest engine filled an entire underground laboratory. At its center sat a ring of superconducting coils 40 feet across. Within the ring floated a sphere of polished glass containing a lattice of quantum sensors suspended in vacuum. The concept was simple in theory. Every physical event, every motion of atoms, every sound wave, every photon disturbs spacetime. Normally, those disturbances dissipate. But Wren believed that under certain quantum conditions, faint interference patterns remain. His machine did not travel through time. Instead, it read the interference patterns of past events, reconstructing them like a hologram. Think of it like ripples in a pond. Throw a stone into water, and the ripples spread out. Even after they fade, subtle disturbances remain in the water's molecular motion. If you had an instrument sensitive enough, you could reconstruct the original splash. The palimpsest engine was designed to detect ripples up to 3,000 years old, but no one believed it would work, not even Wren's own team. 3. The first vision. Only 2 people remained in the lab the night they activated the machine. Elias Wren and Dr. Mira Calder. Mira specialized in quantum signal reconstruction. Without her algorithms, the machine would produce nothing but noise. Final calibration complete, she said. Wren stared through the observation glass at the sphere inside the ring. Set temporal depth to 20 years, he said. Why 20? Because we can verify it. Mira typed the command. Location lock? Wren smiled slightly. This room, they powered up the coils. The ring began to hum. Magnetic fields twisted into impossible geometries. The quantum lattice in the sphere flickered with faint blue light. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then the air inside the ring shimmered. At first it looked like heat distortion. Then shapes began to form, ghostly, translucent. A second laboratory appeared inside the ring, overlapping the present one. But it wasn't empty. People moved inside it. The younger version of Wren himself stood near a workbench, arguing with a technician about wiring configurations. Mira's voice went quiet. Elias. They were watching the past, not a recording. A reconstruction of reality itself, exactly as it had been 20 years earlier. The past played silently, like a holographic memory. Then the image collapsed. The ring shut down. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Finally, Mira whispered, "You just turned spacetime into a history book." 4. The 3,000-year limit. Over the next 6 months, the palimpsest engine improved rapidly. They reconstructed, lost meetings between politicians, unrecorded scientific discoveries, crime scenes exactly as they occurred, ancient ceremonies long forgotten. Historians called it the greatest invention since writing. Governments called it something else. Evidence. But the machine had a limit. The deeper they probed into the past, the weaker the echoes became. Beyond roughly 3,000 years, spacetime noise overwhelmed the signal. The interference pattern simply faded. It was like trying to hear a whisper through a hurricane. Still, 3,000 years was enough to see things no one had ever witnessed. Ancient Rome, early China, the final years of the Egyptian pharaohs, and things that historians had only guessed about. But Wren wasn't interested in famous moments. He wanted to see something else. 5. The Library of Alexandria. One night he asked Mira to run a new reconstruction. Coordinates? She asked. Alexandria, Egypt. She raised an eyebrow. You're serious? Yes. Date? Wren hesitated. 48 BCE, the year the Library of Alexandria burned. The palimpsest engine hummed to life. Gradually the image formed. Columns, shelves, scrolls stacked like walls, scholars walking between tables. It was the largest library of the ancient world. Mira leaned forward. My God. The machine was not just showing the destruction, it showed everything before it. Thousands of scrolls, works of philosophy, astronomy, medicine, knowledge lost for 2,000 years. They watched as soldiers ran through the building, flames spread across the shelves, smoke swallowed centuries of learning. The image faded. Neither scientist spoke. Finally Mira said, "Do you realize what this means?" Wren nodded slowly. Yes, we can recover every lost book ever written. 6. The dark implication. The discovery changed everything. But the machine had a darker consequence. If it could reconstruct the past, then nothing was ever truly secret. Every crime, every private conversation, every betrayal. Governments realized that the palimpsest engine could expose centuries of hidden history. Wars might be reconsidered. Heroes might become villains. Entire religions might be challenged. Within weeks, officials demanded control of the machine. Wren refused. That was when he discovered the final secret hidden inside his own invention. 7. The earliest signal. One night Mira ran a calibration scan near the machine's maximum range, temporal depth, 3,000 years, she said. The image appeared, but it wasn't Egypt, and it wasn't any place on Earth. Instead they saw a strange structure standing in a desert valley. Metal towers, circular rings, a device astonishingly similar to the palimpsest engine. Mira frowned. That can't be right. They adjusted the coordinates. The image remained. The timestamp was clear. 978 BCE, nearly 3,000 years ago. Someone had built the same machine. Wren felt a chill. Zoom in, the image sharpened. A group of people stood beside the ancient device. They wore unfamiliar clothing. But the machine itself was unmistakable. One of them activated it. The rings glowed, and suddenly the reconstructed image shifted. They were no longer watching the ancient people. They were watching another scene from even earlier in time. The ancient machine had been doing exactly what theirs did, recovering the past. Wren whispered, "We weren't the first." 8. The endless echo. Over the next weeks they investigated the ancient structure. Each reconstruction revealed something shocking. The machine in 978 BCE had also discovered another older machine, and that one had found another, a chain stretching back through centuries, each civilization discovering the echoes of time, each building the same machine, each uncovering the same truth. The past was never lost. It was recorded into space-time itself, but the oldest machine they could find lay right at the edge of the palimpsest engine's limit, 3,000 years ago. And beyond that, only noise. One night Mira asked the question neither had dared say aloud. What if that's why the limit exists? Wren looked at her. What do you mean? What if the earliest machine wasn't discovering the past? She gestured to the humming ring. What if it was creating it? 9. The realization. Wren ran the final experiment. Instead of reconstructing a historical event, he programmed the palimpsest engine to record their own present moment into spacetime. A deliberate temporal imprint. The coils surged, energy flooded the lattice. Then he shut the machine down. Why did you do that? Mira asked. Wren stared at the quiet ring. Because in 3,000 years, he smiled faintly. Someone else will build this machine, and when they search the past, they'll find us. He looked around the lab, at the computers, the wires, the humming machinery. We're not just studying history, we're writing it. 10. The echoes continue. Centuries from now, another scientist will activate a machine like this one. They will peer into the past. They will see two figures standing in a laboratory in the year 2048, and they will realize what Wren realized. History is not a line, it is an echo chamber. Civilizations rise, they rediscover the same machine, they watch the same past, and become part of the same signal, the universe remembering itself forever. Chapter 11. The Trial of History. Within a year of the palimpsest engine's unveiling, the world stopped arguing about history. Instead, it started replaying it. The first demonstrations were harmless, the burning of the Library of Alexandria, the signing of the Magna Carta, speeches by long-dead philosophers. But soon the requests became darker. People wanted justice. The most controversial proposal came from a legal consortium in California. They wanted to reconstruct the night of June 12, 1994. The murders tied to the trial of O.J. Simpson. Dr. Elias Wren stared at the request for a long time. You realize what happens if we do this, Mira said quietly. Yes, Wren replied. No more speculation, no more doubt, or, Mira added, no more privacy in history. The reconstruction chamber, filled with reporters, lawyers, and scientists. Outside the lab, protests filled the streets. Some demanded the truth. Others feared what would happen if every historical verdict could be revisited. The palimpsest engine powered up. The room darkened, and the past appeared. A Los Angeles street materialized in shimmering light, then the entrance to the condominium, then the figures. Every motion was visible, every step, every gesture. There was no camera angle, no editing, no missing footage, just reality, reconstructed from space-time itself. Gasps echoed through the chamber. One lawyer collapsed into a chair. Another simply whispered, "My God." Within minutes, the world knew exactly what had happened that night, and the consequences spread instantly. 2 weeks later, another request arrived, this one from historians. They wanted to see the crime that had shocked America 60 years earlier. The 1932 kidnapping of the infant son of aviator Charles Lindbergh. The man executed for the crime, Bruno Richard Hauptmann, had always claimed he was innocent. Some historians believed him, others believed the evidence had been overwhelming. Now the machine could show the truth. When the reconstruction played, the audience sat in complete silence. The nursery appeared, the ladder against the house, the figure climbing through the window. Every detail unfolded in quiet, relentless clarity. When it ended, the room remained silent for nearly a minute. History had rendered its verdict, but that was when Wren finally understood the danger. The machine could solve murders, but it could also expose every secret humanity had ever kept. Private conversations, hidden betrayals, unknown crimes, governments, religions, heroes, all of them could be replayed. The past was no longer safe. And for the first time since inventing the palimpsest engine, Wren wondered whether humanity had truly been ready to see everything it had ever done. Chapter 11. The Weight of Eternity. The lab was silent, save for the soft hum of the chronoviewer. Outside, the city slept unaware of the truths that now existed within these walls, truths that could unravel history itself. Dr. Elias Ward sat alone, staring at the images that danced on the screen. Faces from the past blinked at him, alive with emotion, fear, joy, and despair. He had seen emperors weep, commoners celebrate, and countless lives extinguished long before their time. Lena Morales entered quietly, her eyes rimmed with exhaustion. You've been at it for hours, she said softly. Ward didn't turn. It never ends, Lena. Every time I think we've seen it all, another thread of history appears. Another life demanding acknowledgement. She swallowed. Do you think humanity can handle this? Seeing everything all at once? Ward finally looked at her. I don't know. Perhaps not. We weren't meant to see every truth. We were meant to believe some things, to let mystery endure. But the machine, it doesn't care what we were meant to handle. He gestured to the chrono viewer. Images of the ancient world shimmered, then shifted seamlessly to a vision of Jesus walking among his followers. Ward's hand trembled. We've seen him as he truly was. Not myth, not art, but a man living in his own time. And yet, even this knowledge feels heavier than we anticipated. Lena stepped closer. Do you regret it? Ward hesitated. He wanted to say yes, to admit that some truths are too dangerous, too overwhelming. But deep down, he knew that knowledge had a cost, but it was a cost worth paying for the sake of history. No, he said finally. Regret isn't the word. Fear, maybe. But history doesn't wait for our comfort. It only is. And now, so are we. For a moment, they sat in silence, letting the weight of thousands of years press down upon them. Every face, every event, every whisper of the past was theirs to witness. And for the first time, Ward understood that their work was not just science. It was a responsibility that spanned eternity. Finally, Lena spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Do we show anyone? Ward looked at the chrono viewer, then back at her. Some truths are too profound for the world to see all at once. But the echoes of time, they will endure, and one day maybe humanity will be ready. The machine hummed, a soft reminder of all that had come before, and all that was yet to come. Outside the lab, the city slumbered, unaware that the past was no longer lost, and that the future had forever changed. Jesus' appearance according to the chrono viewer. Height and build, average for his time, roughly 5 feet 5 inches, lean but strong, with a physique shaped by walking long distances and daily labor. Skin tone, medium brown, reflecting the typical Semitic population of Galilee. Hair and eyes, dark brown, almost black hair, worn slightly long but practical, deep brown eyes, sharp and observant. Facial features, strong cheekbones, a straight nose, full lips, and a beard, consistent with Jewish customs of the era. Clothing and appearance, simple, earth-toned tunic and sandals. He looked like an ordinary man of his community, unassuming yet commanding attention through presence rather than grandeur. Aura, expression, calm, attentive, with a gentle authority, no theatrical divine glow, but a human warmth and intensity that drew people naturally. The team noted a crucial insight. The impact of his life and teachings was far greater than his physical appearance. He was ordinary in form, extraordinary in presence, which explained why centuries of mythologizing had exaggerated him in art. Ward wrote in his log, the man was neither pale nor saintly in the way we imagined. He was human, and that is what makes the legacy of his words and actions all the more remarkable. Echoes of Time, extended chapters. Chapter 12, The Leak. The first leak did not come from a spy or a government agency. It came from a graduate student. Daniel Cho had been hired to catalog the growing library of chrono viewer recordings. At first, the work had seemed mundane, timestamps, coordinates, historical tags. But as the weeks passed, Cho realized what he was handling. These weren't reconstructions, they were actual moments in history. He had watched a fisherman in the Sea of Galilee laugh as his boat tipped in rough waves. He had watched Roman soldiers gambling in a dusty courtyard, and then he saw the file labeled simply, Galilee, Year 30, Curiosity 1. When the playback began, Cho froze. A small crowd stood along a dusty hillside. A man spoke quietly, gesturing with calm authority. The image quality shimmered, but the face was unmistakably human. Weathered skin, dark hair, deep-set eyes that seemed to listen even while speaking. Cho's hands trembled. He knew immediately who it was supposed to be. Within minutes, he copied the file. Within hours, fragments of the video appeared anonymously on the internet. Within a day, the world erupted. Chapter 13, The Global Shock. By sunrise the next morning, every major news network was discussing the footage. Historians argued over its authenticity. Religious leaders urged caution. Scientists demanded access to the machine. Governments demanded control of it. Dr. Elias Ward watched the chaos unfold on a wall of monitors inside the lab. Lina Morales stood beside him, pale. We knew this would happen eventually, she said. Ward nodded slowly. But not like this. The video clip circulating online lasted only 19 seconds. It showed the man speaking softly while several listeners sat nearby on stones. What stunned viewers most was not his appearance. It was his normality. He looked like an ordinary man of 1st century Judea. Sun-darkened skin, simple clothing, rough hands, no halo, no divine glow. Just a teacher speaking to a small group of followers. For some people, the footage strengthened faith. For others, it shattered expectations. And for billions, it raised the most unsettling question imaginable. If we can see him, what else can we see? Chapter 14, The Tribunal of History. 3 weeks later, Ward found himself sitting in a government chamber. Representatives from 50 nations sat around a circular table. Behind them stood advisors, historians, theologians, military officials. A single question dominated the meeting. Who controls the chronoviewer? One delegate leaned forward. This device can settle every historical dispute on Earth, another added quietly. It could also destroy reputations, overturn court rulings, and destabilize governments. Ward folded his hands. You're all thinking too small. The room fell silent. This machine doesn't just show history, he continued. It shows people. Every moment we observe is someone's life, someone who never consented to be watched by the future. Lina spoke next. We've already seen wars, executions, betrayals, private moments. Imagine billions of strangers watching your life 2,000 years from now. The ethical weight of the idea hung in the air. Finally, a historian at the far end of the table asked a question no one had yet dared to voice. Dr. Ward, have you seen the crucifixion? Ward looked down. Yes. The room went completely silent. And, the historian asked. Ward's voice was barely above a whisper. It was worse than any painting ever captured. Chapter 15, The Archive of Humanity. Months passed. The Chronoviewer lab became the most secure facility on Earth. But inside, the work continued. Ward and his team began constructing what they called the Archive of Humanity, a carefully curated record of the past. They watched ancient cities rise and fall. They saw forgotten languages spoken in marketplaces. They witnessed acts of kindness history had never recorded. One night, Lina sat watching a scene from a village in Galilee. Children chased each other between stone houses. A man repaired fishing nets outside a doorway. Life looked simple, ordinary, strange, she murmured. What is? Ward asked. All our lives we studied history as wars and kings. She pointed to the screen. But most of it was just people living. Ward smiled faintly. That may be the most important discovery of all. Chapter 16, The Final Decision. Eventually the pressure became unbearable. Nations wanted access, corporations wanted to commercialize the technology, courts wanted to reopen old cases. The chronoviewer could prove or disprove almost anything. Late one night, Ward and Lina sat alone in the lab. Between them stood the machine that had changed the world. What if we shut it down? Lina asked. Ward looked at the glowing interface. All knowledge has consequences, he said, but some knowledge changes civilization overnight. She placed a hand on the console. If humanity isn't ready, Ward finished the sentence quietly, then maybe the past deserves to remain partly mysterious. The machine hummed softly. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Outside, the world waited for answers. Chapter 17, The Courtroom of the Dead. The first legal battle arrived faster than anyone expected. A federal judge requested access to the chronoviewer to review an infamous murder case from decades earlier. If the machine truly showed history exactly as it happened, it could finally settle arguments that had divided the public for generations. Dr. Elias Ward sat in the observation room while lawyers argued on a video conference screen. This technology could overturn hundreds of convictions, one attorney said, or prove them correct, another countered. Ward rubbed his temples. The machine had been built to understand history, not to turn the past into a courtroom exhibit. But curiosity won. That evening, the team calibrated the chronoviewer to a quiet residential street from 30 years earlier. The machine hummed as layers of time unfolded backward. Streetlights flickered on. Cars rolled past. A house appeared. Then figures began to move. Everyone in the room leaned forward. They were about to witness a moment that had haunted the public imagination for decades. When the scene ended, nobody spoke. Lina Morales finally whispered, "History. Just testified." Ward stared at the darkened screen. But will anyone accept the verdict? Chapter 18, The Forgotten Centuries. Once governments realized the machine could settle modern questions, historians began demanding something else entirely. They wanted to explore lost civilizations. Ward approved the first major expedition through time, the Mediterranean world nearly 3,000 years ago. The chronoviewer projected a bustling harbor city onto the viewing chamber walls. Ships creaked against wooden docks. Merchants shouted in languages no modern ear had heard spoken aloud for millennia. One historian burst into tears. "That's Phoenician," she said, pointing at a group of traders arguing over cargo. Another scholar laughed in disbelief as scribes recorded transactions on wax tablets. For centuries, historians had argued about how ancient societies really worked. Now the answers stood alive before them, but the deeper they explored, the stranger the discoveries became. Cities appeared in places archaeologists had never identified. Languages surfaced that had left no written record. Entire cultures had vanished from human memory. Ward realized something unsettling. History books were not just incomplete, they were missing entire chapters of civilization. Chapter 19, The Day in Galilee. The most requested recording in the Archive of Humanity was always the same, a day in the life of the teacher from Galilee. After months of debate, Ward finally agreed to run a longer observation. The chronoviewer reconstructed a hillside overlooking a lake. The sun hung low in the sky as small groups gathered on the grass. In the center stood the man they had glimpsed before. He spoke quietly, pausing often as if choosing his words carefully. No one in the lab could understand the Aramaic conversation perfectly, but the tone was unmistakable. It felt less like a sermon and more like a conversation. People asked questions, he answered them calmly. Children wandered near him without fear. Lena leaned toward Ward. That's what surprises me most, she whispered. What? He isn't distant from them. He listens. On the screen, the man knelt beside a child who had stumbled on the hillside. He brushed dust from the child's sleeve and smiled before continuing the discussion. The room stayed silent long after the recording ended. Ward finally said what everyone was thinking. For 2,000 years, the world argued about theology. He gestured toward the frozen image. But at the center of it all, there was simply a man talking with people. Chapter 20, The Edge of Time. The greatest discovery came by accident. While adjusting the machine's range, Lena noticed something strange in the chronoviewer's data patterns. The machine worked by reconstructing echoes of past events stored in the physical structure of the universe. But the echoes didn't stop at 3,000 years. They kept going, far deeper. Ward stared at the projection graphs in disbelief. Are you saying we could go back further? He asked. Much further, Lena replied. How far? She hesitated. If the equations are right, we might be able to see the earliest human civilizations. Ward felt a chill run down his spine. Then another thought struck him. If the echoes exist that far back, Lena finished the sentence for him, then they might exist all the way to the beginning for the first time since inventing the chronoviewer. Ward felt genuine fear. Humanity had built a machine to see the past. But now the past seemed endless. And somewhere at the farthest edge of time, the machine might reveal the moment when everything began. Trees surrounded a narrow road, the late summer air still warm in the darkness. A parked car sat near the edge of a field. Lena glanced at the timestamp and then quietly looked away. Another moment nobody recorded, she said. Ward nodded. Yet for the people in that car, it may have been one of the most important nights of their lives. Moments like that highlight the central theme the team keeps discovering. History isn't only made of public events, it's also made of deeply personal milestones that shaped individual lives. Chapter 21, The Transmission. The idea began as a joke. For months, the chronoviewer had allowed humanity to see the past, but never touch it. The machine reconstructed light and sound echoes preserved in the physical structure of the universe. It was a window, nothing more, or so everyone believed. Late one night, Lena Morales leaned back from the console and said, almost absently, if the universe preserved those signals once, maybe it could carry them again. Dr. Elias Ward looked up from his notes. Carry them? He asked. Transmit them, she said. The room went quiet. For the first time since the chronoviewer had been built, the team considered a possibility even more dangerous than seeing history. Speaking to it. The experiment. The principle was terrifyingly simple. If the machine could reconstruct ancient light waves and sound vibrations, perhaps it could also generate new ones and project them backward along the same temporal pathways. Not matter, not people, just sight and sound, images, voices, signals. Ward paced the lab as the implications formed. You're suggesting we could send a message into the past. Not physically alter anything, Lena replied quickly, just broadcast. Like a signal traveling along a timeline. But if someone hears it, Ward said slowly, that is altering history. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. Finally, Ward said the words neither wanted to admit. Let's test it. The first transmission. They chose a harmless moment. A small Roman outpost along a desert road nearly 2,000 years earlier. Two soldiers sat beside a fire, half asleep during the night watch. Ward activated the chronoviewer. The familiar, shimmering reconstruction appeared. Flames crackled, wind stirred sand along the road. Then Lena activated the transmission module. Her voice trembled slightly. Hello? Nothing happened. The soldiers kept talking. Ward frowned. Maybe the signal isn't strong enough. One of the soldiers suddenly stopped speaking. He turned his head slowly, directly toward the chronoviewer. The lab froze. The second soldier stood up, scanning the darkness. Did you hear that? He asked in Latin. Ward's heart pounded. They had done it. The man stepped away from the fire and stared into empty air. Who's there? Inside the lab, nobody moved. The chronoviewer was no longer just a window. It was a voice across centuries. Panic in the lab. Lena shut the transmission off immediately. The Roman soldiers continued searching the darkness for several seconds before eventually returning to their fire. Ward wiped sweat from his forehead. We just changed something, he said. Maybe not, Lena replied. Maybe history always included that moment. Ward stared at her. You're suggesting we didn't change the past because we were already part of it? The paradox hung in the air like a storm cloud. The terrifying implication. If they could send voices into the past, they could send images, warnings, messages, knowledge, or lies. The possibilities raced through Ward's mind. They could warn ancient cities of disasters, reveal future science to earlier civilizations, influence wars, create religions, or prevent them. Humanity had just discovered something far more powerful than a time machine. They had discovered history could hear them, the decision. By morning, the entire team had gathered in the lab. Ward stood before them with a grim expression. The chronoviewer was meant to observe history, he said. Last night we crossed a line, he paused. We proved we can transmit sight and sound into the past. Gasps filled the room. Ward continued quietly. If the world learns about this, every government on Earth will demand control of it, Lena added the final thought. And if even one person tries to rewrite history... No one finished the sentence. They didn't need to. The past was no longer untouchable, and the future had just become infinitely more dangerous. Chapter 22, The Investment Paradox. After discovering that the chronoviewer could transmit faint signals of sight and sound into the past, Dr. Elias Ward's team realized something unsettling. They didn't need to change wars or governments to prove history could be altered. They could test it with money. Ward stood before the projection console. Suppose we send a message to someone before a lottery drawing, he said. If they win, we ask them to invest the money in something that matures decades later. Lena frowned. You're talking about creating wealth that technically originates from the future. Exactly. The target they chose was the modern American lottery, the massive jackpot game known as Powerball. The plan. The rules were simple. Transmit the winning numbers to a specific person shortly before the drawing. Instruct them to claim the prize. Have them purchase long-term government bonds that would mature far in the future. The bonds would come from the US Treasury's Savings Bond Program, administered by the United States Department of the Treasury. When those bonds matured decades later, the funds would exist in the same timeline where the chronoviewer team already lived. In other words, future scientists could create money that technically originated in the past but depended on knowledge from the future. The first attempt. They selected a random apartment in Ohio in 2004. Through the chronoviewer transmission system, Lena projected faint glowing numbers across the wall while the resident sat at his kitchen table. 7 to 14, 23 to 32, 41 to 12. The man stared at the wall. What the... Ward then transmitted a brief whisper. Play these numbers tomorrow. The signal ended. In the lab, nobody spoke, waiting for history. 2 days later, the team checked the historical records. Ward typed the drawing date into the database. The screen loaded. Then it displayed the winning numbers. They matched perfectly, but something unexpected appeared in the historical archive. The winner had followed additional instructions that no one in the lab remembered sending. Instead of spending the prize, the man invested the money in government savings bonds set to mature 30 years later. Lena stared at the screen. We never told him to do that. Ward's voice was barely audible. Then who did? The terrifying possibility. If the bonds matured in the team's present day, they would soon become available, money created by a message from the future. But the message that told the winner to buy bonds had not come from anyone in the lab, which meant only one thing. Someone else had already discovered how to transmit signals through time, and they were using it. Chapter 23, Coordinates. The chronoviewer hummed as Lena Morales entered the coordinates. 39 to 90,835 north, 75 north, 750 west. Date. Alanis Ward leaned over the console. Lena nodded, completionary moment in history. The projection field shimmered. Gradually the outlines of a quiet suburban street appeared, trees lining a narrow road, crickets chirping in the late summer darkness. A porch light glowed on a small house. A car rolled slowly to the curb. Two young people stepped out. The young man walked around the front of the car, clearly nervous. The girl laughed softly as they stood awkwardly beside the driveway. Inside the lab, the researchers watched silently. After everything they had seen, ancient cities, kings, wars, this felt strangely intimate. Just two teenagers at the end of a date. So much history, Lena whispered, and most of it is just moments like this. Outside the house, the girl leaned closer. The young man hesitated, then kissed her goodnight. Not dramatic, not historic. Just a brief, shy kiss beneath a porch light in 1992. Ward folded his arms. That moment was never written in any book, he said. No one recorded it. No one remembers it except them. The chronoviewer continued to run, quietly preserving the scene. That's the strange thing about time, Lena said. What is? Ward stared at the screen. History is mostly made of moments that nobody realizes are history. On the projection, the couple said their goodnights. The girl walked toward the house while the young man lingered for a moment, smiling to himself before getting back into the car. The vehicle drove away, the porch light flicked off, and the quiet suburban street returned to darkness. Chapter 25, Tim's memory. The chronoviewer chamber had grown crowded. News of the strange discrepancy, the elderly man whose memory did not perfectly match the machine's reconstruction, had quietly circulated among the researchers and their contacts. Now another witness had been invited. He introduced himself simply. Tim, he was in his 70s now, tall but slightly stooped, wearing a plain jacket and carrying the careful manner of someone unsure whether he belonged in a high-tech laboratory. Dr. Elias Ward gestured toward the viewing chamber. We'd like you to watch something, he said. The projection field came alive again. September 5th, 1992, 39.9283 degree N, 75.56550 degree W. The familiar suburban street appeared. Crickets chirped. A porch light glowed. A car rolled slowly to the curb. Tim leaned forward. For several seconds he said nothing. Then his eyebrows rose. That looks familiar, he murmured. The young couple stepped out of the car. Tim suddenly chuckled softly. Well, I'll be damned. Ward turned toward him. You recognize it? Tim nodded slowly. I might, he said. Back then I was 22, going to school at Delaware Technical Community College, working nights at a theater over in Concordville. He pointed toward the projection. That could be me. Lena paused the scene. What do you remember about that night? Tim leaned back, thinking. Well, first thing, I remember what I was wearing, he said. Just a t-shirt and jeans. Nothing fancy. He leaned closer to the image again, and the girl's name was Connie. The scientists exchanged glances. Tim continued. We'd been out somewhere, I forget where, but I drove her home late that night. The projection resumed. The young man walked toward the passenger side of the car. Tim suddenly shook his head. Nope, he said. Ward stopped the playback again. What's wrong? Tim pointed at the moment, just before the kiss. That's not how it happened. Everyone leaned in. I remember it clear as day, Tim said. We were talking through the window for a minute, then I took off my glasses. He mimed the motion unconsciously, lifting invisible frames from his face. And that's when she leaned over and kissed me. The scientists looked back at the projection. In the chronoviewer recording, the young man never removed glasses. In fact, he wasn't wearing any. Lena felt a chill creep down her spine. You're certain? She asked. Tim laughed. Pretty certain. I wore glasses back then all the time. He watched the scene play to the end. The young couple kissed beneath the porch light. Tim smiled faintly. Yeah, he said quietly. That part definitely happened. Ward folded his arms, troubled. Now they had two living witnesses describing the same moment differently from the chronoviewer. Different car, different movements, even different details about something as small as a pair of glasses. Ward stared at the dark screen after the projection ended. For months the machine had seemed flawless, a perfect archive of history. But now an unsettling question filled the lab. If the chronoviewer showed the past, why did the people who lived it remember something else? And far more disturbing, which version was the real one? Chapter 26, Lynn speaks. The room had grown tense. Two elderly men, both recalling September 5th, 1992, had already offered conflicting memories at the same moment the chronoviewer had reconstructed. Ward and Lena had been silent, trying to reconcile the data. Then the door opened quietly. An older woman entered, moving with measured steps. She introduced herself simply. Lynn. She carried herself with calm authority. At 75, her eyes still sparkled with the sharpness of someone who had spent a lifetime observing life carefully. Ward gestured for her to sit near the observation console. Thank you for coming, he said. We'd like to hear your recollection. Lynn nodded, looking first at the screen, then at Tim, who was seated nearby. I've been listening to all of this, she said softly, and I think I need to speak up. For Tim turned toward her, a faint blush creeping across his face. Go ahead, he said quietly. She took a breath. You're both trying to reconcile memories with a machine, she said, gesturing toward the chronoviewer. But some things, some details, even small ones, aren't just about history, they're about how people experienced it. Tim shifted in his chair. Exactly, Lynn continued. That night. Yes, you kissed Connie after taking off your glasses, but there's more, what you felt. The hesitation, the excitement, the awkwardness, it can't be captured by a machine. Ward frowned. We're trying to verify objective events, what actually happened. Lynn shook her head gently. You can reconstruct images, sounds, even movement, but you can't reconstruct intention, emotion, context. You're missing the human element. That's why Tim remembers certain things differently from what you see here. She turned her gaze to Tim, smiling faintly. And for the record, she added, he did what he remembered. And it mattered. That's enough. Lena scribbled notes furiously. You're suggesting that the chronoviewer, even if accurate physically, might not align perfectly with human memory, because memory contains more than just observable events? Yes, Lynn said. Memory is a lens, and sometimes that lens preserves what the machine cannot, meaning... Ward remained quiet, considering her words. The room had gone still. Even the humming of the chrono-viewer seemed softer. For the first time, the team realized that observing history wasn't enough. They could reconstruct moments down to the smallest detail, but people remembered what mattered to them. Tim leaned back in his chair, finally smiling. She's right, he said. Even if the car was different, the glasses weren't, or the machine shows something else, it was still our night. And that's what I remember. Lynn reached over, lightly touching his hand. Exactly, she said. And in that quiet lab, surrounded by technology capable of recreating millennia of human history, the researchers realized a profound truth. No machine could ever capture the full weight of a human memory or the love and life woven into it.